Today we're going to talk about the next person you need on your high performance real estate team, the contractor. What's going on, guys? Chris and Ryan here with Boselli Brothers Real Estate, and today we're going to talk about the next member on your high performance real estate team, the contractor. So, what is your contractor's role on your team? Now, this one's pretty self-explanatory. The contractor is obviously going to be responsible for all renovations on your properties. They're also going to be responsible for helping you come up with offer prices based on the bids they provide pre-purchase. Now, this is going to depend on your existing relationship with the contractor or how much work you've done before. If it's a brand new relationship, they might be a little more hesitant to be running around to properties you don't even own yet and getting you bids, so you're going to need to be tactful in your approach here. One way we've done this is offer them a small flat rate fee to go out and get these bids and just take a look at the property during the walkthrough. This provides them some type of compensation for the work beforehand and shows that you're willing to put your money where your mouth is. Now, where can you find contractors? This is going to be the same story as every other team member we've been saying to start with. Go on Google, go on Yelp, search for contractors in your area. You can also go on Bigger Pockets, use the forums, and try to ask other folks for their recommendations. Same thing with Facebook groups and other platforms. But again, keep in mind, people are going to keep the contractor referrals a lot closer to their chest. Another great way you can find contractors, and again, this is going to seem repetitive, but ask your property manager, ask your agent for any recommendations of people they've worked with in the past. They are going to be more incentivized to provide you better contractors because the quality of the work they do directly has an effect on the work they will be able to do for you as well.
Now, here are some important interview questions you want to ask every contractor that you speak with. Number one, ask for their preferred method of communication. Now, this might seem like a simple question, but in this business, you need to be able to get your contractors out to these properties as fast as possible, because typically with a lot of investment properties or distressed properties, there's going to be a lot of demand of investors and a lot of contractors doing the walkthrough at the time of the showing. Next question you're going to want to ask is, are you licensed and insured in the state that you'll be performing the work? You're going to want to get a copy of their general contractor's license as well as their proof of insurance. That is workers' comp insurance as well as liability insurance. You're going to want to be added as an additionally insured onto your contractor's policy. Either you or your LLC, whichever owns the property they'll be performing the work at. This is very standard practice in the industry, and it costs the contractor $0 to do, and it gives another additional blanket of security. They shouldn't have a problem doing it, and if they don't want to do it, it's probably a red flag that they don't have up-to-date insurance.
This can help if there's a slip and fall accident during the work and the individual decides to come after the property owner, thinking that you might have a lot more money or a lot more assets hidden that they could come after. So it's good to get on your contractor policy for help with coverage.
Next, you're going to want to ask if they have employees or if they have independent 1099 contractors. If they are subcontracting out the work to independent contractors, are all of those contractors licensed in the specific field that they will be doing work at your property? If they have handymen, ask them specifically what jobs they will be doing at your property. You want to make sure that the people doing your electrical and your plumbing and your HVAC and all of the very technically specific jobs are licensed and have experience in that field. You don't want them to have their first go at it at your property. You want to ask them how many investors that they work with and that they have worked with. You want to ask them how many projects they currently are overseeing. You want to ask them specifically what type of work they're doing, if they're just simple kitchen remodels, if they're doing full burnout or full gut replacement jobs.
You also want to see the number of projects that, if it's a general contractor, that they oversee or their teams oversee. You want to make sure that this individual is not taking on a lot of work and getting overstretched. We saw a lot of this during COVID when contractors would take on too much work because of the lack of labor that was in the market, and that will directly reflect the quality of work you get out of it.
They typically only have a few people they call for flooring and plumbing, and so if they have multiple jobs at once, that's going to get spread out and your timeline of your job is going to be affected. Ask them how many years of experience they have as a general contractor. Again, you don't want to get involved with a contractor that is just starting out or just in their growth phase, because it's a very nuanced business and they're going to have a very hard time of managing multiple projects at once, especially if business picks up for them. Exactly like I said earlier, your timeline and your budget is going to be affected by that. You can ask, what is their typical time frame for full rehab jobs? Ask them specifics on flooring, kitchens, drywall, any type of work that they'll be doing. You want to gauge how long each individual piece is going to take, and then you can construct your timeline based on those. You want to ask them how they decide what cabinets, what flooring, what countertops to put into a unit. Their answer should be whatever you are intending to do with the property. Your scope of work is going to vary drastically, whether it's going to be a retail product to sell after a flip, or if you're turning it into a C-grade rental property. You do not want to put granite countertops into a C-class rental property because it's not going to increase your rent of that property. The contractor is going to be more inclined to put in the top of the notch items because then they get the percentage based on the total rehab scope. You want to make sure you're not spending money where it's not going to return the most to your investment. You want to ask them up front, what is your management oversight fee? These general contractors are not doing this for fun. They're doing it to make money. You typically want to see that rate around 10 to 20%. Ask them if they have a specific team they work with for every rehab job. You typically want to see 2 to 3 estimates for every subcontracted piece of work. So either that's countertops, flooring, drywall. You want to see a few estimates come in so that they can get you the best price. If they work with the same team every single job, they're probably not getting the best price you could possibly get out in the market if you had a different contractor subbing the work out. You want to ask, will you be able to take professional before and after photos of the rehab? You want to ask about video walkthroughs at different phases of the rehab. Pictures can hide a lot of imperfections in the work. Video walkthroughs of every corner of the house cannot hide these imperfections.
Guys, this brings us back to our system of checks and balances we keep bringing up. You're going to want to use your other team members to help verify that the contractors are doing this work correctly. You can have, if your agent is going to own the back-end retail product of a flip, you're going to want them to go through periodically and do video walkthroughs where they can also see, okay, here's what work is missing, here's what looks imperfect or is not done yet, so you're not also paying contractors for work they haven't done yet, as we'll get to in a minute.
In addition, if it's going to be a rental property, you're going to want to have your property manager walk through the property to ensure that it meets their minimum rental standard. This will avoid holding costs if you need to add additional things like smoke detectors into your property after the rehab work has already been done. They will already have walked it during the rehab process and add these punch list items that the contractor can do during the rehab time. A really important topic you want to bring up is what is their draw schedule. Now, their draw schedule is going to be how the contractor wants to get paid for their work in what time frame. Sometimes a contractor will ask you to give 50% of the work up front. That is not a good idea. They're doing this for 2 reasons. One, to try to get 50% of the money up front for work they haven't even started yet. And 2, it's probably to finish up other jobs that they're currently working on that they're short money on. A healthy draw schedule would be a third up front for them to buy materials and begin the work, and then a third at the halfway point and a third at the completion point. You want to be very specific of what it means to have a halfway point and a job completed point. Because once you sign that dotted line and sign off on the work, they are under no more legal obligation to return to the property to do additional work because you've already paid them and you've already signed off the fact that the work has been completed.
Once you finish interviewing potential contractors and decide on 1, 2, or 3 that you're planning on using for your projects, it'll be time to start reviewing the actual contracts. Now, you could have your own contract that you have pre-made from past experience. The contractor will likely also have their own documentation that they like to use. Or you could land somewhere in the middle where you take the best of each contract and make one uniform document to use moving forward. Here are some clauses you want to be sure to include in this contract with your contractors. You want the contractor to pull all permits. This ensures that 1, they are pulling permits for all required permitted work, so it doesn't come back to bite you down the line during inspections. And 2, it takes the liability off of you and makes sure that there's no confusion about who is going to do this, which could be very costly as permits can take 4 to 6 to 8 weeks in some cities. Next will be the physical scope of work. This will be the checklist or line item of every single thing that is to be done at the property. You want this to be very specific as possible, as Ryan alluded to earlier. Everything from the address of the physical property to the start date to the potential draw dates in terms of 50% of the work will be completed by this date, the rest will be completed by this date, down to the small details of who is going to have the dumpster delivered to your property and who's responsible for getting it removed at the end of the project. Next, you're going to want to make sure that draw schedule that Ryan talked about earlier is laid out crystal clear. As he mentioned, never give 50% of the renovation funds up front. Start with, say, a 10%, 30, 30, 30 breakdown of 10% up front for materials and then 30% at each, 1/3 of the work is done. And you're going to have crystal clear guidelines again as to once you get to that 1/3 mark, what work is going to be done and what is the date. I would start by asking contractors for prospective dates about when they think each phase can be completed by and add a buffer of 1 to 2 weeks to it just to make sure that nobody is confused about when things are supposed to be done and what things are supposed to be done.
Something very important is when you do that walkthrough and you have established that 1/3 of the work has been completed and they have held up their end of the bargain, cut them a check on the spot. Contractors will love you for paying on time and promptly when the agreements are met. It will help them meet their end of the bargain if you are meeting your end of the bargain.
With that draw schedule, you're going to want to make sure there's a penalty clause in there saying that if the work is not completed by that date with the 1 to 2 week buffer, that there is a penalty to be paid. This will obviously not include if anything drastic comes up, like if they open up the walls and find something structural wrong with the house that they need to re-pull permits or do something else drastic to the scope of work. It's obviously there's going to be some wiggle room there, but for the most part, it should be agreed upon. This penalty can be anywhere from $50 to $100 to $200 per day for any day over that timeline target that they set. Contractors should also have no problem with this since they gave you the worst case scenario and then you added an additional 1 to 2 weeks to each one. So you were already giving them enough runway to work with. You can also establish clauses for meeting timelines in advance, but you want to be careful about that so they're not promising longer schedules knowing that they can bring that in hopes of increasing their margins. Next is change orders. During the initial walkthrough and initial scope work your contractors provide, it is almost guaranteed that as the projects go on, unless they're simple paint and lipstick jobs, that other things are going to come up, especially when you start opening walls and doing other things that cannot be seen with the naked eye at the initial walkthrough. That will bring up what is called a change order, which is additional work that needs to be done to the property, and you're going to want to make sure that the contractors are not just going ahead and doing this work without your express written approval. Make sure there's a clause in your contract that states any additional work not covered in the original scope needs to be expressly approved and signed off on by you as the owner. This is important because if the contractor decides to go ahead and take the liberty of doing this work for you without your permission, then you will have likely no choice but to pay them for this work, and if you don't, they could file what's called a construction lien on the property. A construction lien is something the contractor could file on your property that will come up in title search when you go to sell down the line, and that will definitely delay the process and could cause you additional headaches and even fees. To avoid this, you want to make sure an additional clause you include is a lien waiver or lien release at each stage of the rehab draw. A lien release is something signed by you and the contractor that simply states at the draw checkpoint that you have paid the contractor for the work, they have completed for the work, and that they can't then go back and file that construction lien on your property. This brings up another point: never pay in cash. You want to establish paper trails. Sometimes contractors can like cash better because cash business, taxes, I'm not going to say anything else, but you want to make sure you have a paper trail and receipts for the amounts that you've paid. That way you can also use them for write-offs. Finally, you want to have your contractor's home address and telephone number. A lot of them will run business through LLCs that will just be at random resident agent service addresses. You want to have their home address and telephone number so you know that they know that you know that we know that everyone knows where to find them if anything goes wrong.
I'd like to give you guys some additional tips and tricks when dealing with contractors in the rehab process during this real estate investment journey. This is new to a lot of people. A lot of people that are real estate investors are really good with numbers and spreadsheets and analysis and not very good with dealing with contractors. So these are a couple of things that you should definitely include in your processes when dealing with these contractors. Number one, you're going to want to add a 10 to 20% fudge factor. What that means is whatever number that contractor gives you originally for your scope of work, you're going to want to add 10 to 20% right off the bat when doing your underwriting. This will help avoid a lot of mistakes along the line when they do open the walls up, rip the floor up, find the subflooring that's all rotted away. You'll already have that covered in your 10 to 20% fudge factor in your underwriting, so it shouldn't break the deal.
As a bonus, if nothing goes wrong, now you have 10 to 20% extra cushion built in for profit.
The biggest tip that I can give, and I know we've said this a couple times now, but you have to get everything in writing. That includes timelines, agreements, draw schedules, expectations, anything and everything related to the work. It's really unfortunate to say, but verbal agreements, this doesn't mean anything anymore. It doesn't hold up in court. And the last tip I can give you is you want to get your contractor's W-9. The W-9 is...
W-9 is a document that says what their tax ID, whether it's an LLC or whether it's their personal tax ID, and it just shows their address and basically where to find them for the government. Again, going back to the cash business, wanting to get receipts, this is how you're going to have to fill out who you paid at the end of the year and issue them 1099s. And if you don't have their tax information beforehand and you've already paid them, a lot of them are going to try to get around that. They don't want you to report income that they're then going to have to pay taxes on. So not everyone, but some people might do this and you could run into issues down the road. So getting it before the work is done, before you paid them anything, is a lot easier than after.
Always plan for the worst case scenario. You never know who you're really doing business with until the bad things come up. And that's going to do it for this video, guys. Again, please like, comment, subscribe. Check out all of our social media pages. The links are down below. Also, check out our website, BoselliBrothersRE.com, and subscribe to our newsletter for all things real estate investing, all up to date. And again, it's all 100% free. We want to get all of this free information out to you guys to help you start and build your real estate journey. And that's going to do it. I'm Ryan.
I'm Chris.
See you next time.
You're gonna want to go down to your local bar. Ask your uncle. He's probably got a guy who can do the work real cheap. I should stop you soon. I just want to play some. You good?